Episode 301, New Agenda. When Violet and Logan arrived home, he thought they'd talk, but Violet had fallen sound asleep in the car while leaning against his shoulder. She felt exhausted after the day's events. Scooping her up in his arms, Logan carried Violet out of the car, straight upstairs to his room. Violet struggled sleepily in his arms, but Logan murmured to her to relax and let him take care of her. He helped her undress and tucked her into bed, where she promptly curled up and fell back into a deep sleep. He kissed her on the forehead, quietly turned out the lights, and went into his study to wait. Logan knew that Mike would have something to report to him soon. That night, at the Kingston family's mansion, Joanna and Miranda were discussing how to deal with Charles and Sylvia. After their first attempt failed, Joanna didn't expect that it would be a very easy situation to solve. The main reason why Joanna was so eager to help Miranda was to make up for her own regret. She regretted she hadn't known about Fiona in time to chase her away from Christopher. Christopher had kept his affair a secret, and Joanna hadn't known anything. She had thought that her husband worshipped the ground she walked on. She never would have expected him to betray her. Because Christopher had an affair, Joanna felt she'd never done anything wrong by cheating with Jackson Gardner. Even when she gave birth to Garrett, while she was still married to Christopher, Joanna figured her husband had deserved it. Therefore, when Joanna learned Miranda was in a similar situation, she wanted to help. She had never thought that she would actually fail. This was simply inconceivable and the ultimate insult to her reputation. There was no woman in Los Angeles who was as influential as her. Joanna had many capable people at her disposal who could do what needed to be done. She had dealt with similar situations in the past. Joanna hadn't tried to do anything that she hadn't done before. Joanna was flustered and exasperated, and she didn't feel like dealing with Miranda, who was shocked, panicked, and angry all at the same time. How could this have possibly happened? Someone must have leaked the information, Joanna insisted. Are you accusing me of something, Miranda? Joanna raised her eyebrows and stared at the other woman. No, of course. Mother isn't doubting you, Joanna. She thinks that Daddy must have arranged for people to keep an eye on us. Otherwise, we wouldn't have gotten the news so quickly. Elizabeth quickly came up to comfort her. Elizabeth knows how to properly deal with people. You, as a mother, should learn from her. Joanna rolled her eyes at Miranda. No wonder even a coward like Charles didn't want her. Miranda was too loud and brash. She didn't seem like a well-bred lady at all. Miranda may have been brash, but she was no fool. She was naturally unhappy that Joanna had failed and brought scrutiny down on their heads. However, they were in this together now, so Miranda had no choice but to continue to work with Joanna. It looks like we will have to sell the Kingston family mansion as soon as possible. If we sell it, we can move to another place. Even if your father wants to keep an eye on us, he will need to make new arrangements. The key is Sylvia. After this incident, Charles will move her to another location. Then what can we do? Miranda raised her hands in frustration. Let's ask Lionel to talk to Dad. They didn't fall out with each other. Lionel respects Dad. He might not doubt him, Elizabeth suggested. Elizabeth wanted Miranda to elevate Lionel to an important position. She'd already thought about it. Even if she married Logan in the future, Elizabeth had no intention of dropping Lionel. She had decided to emulate her new role model, Joanna. A woman could never have too many men. Elizabeth figured the more men she had wrapped around her finger, the more resources she would have at her disposal. It was good to leave your options open. So if Lionel was promoted, he would definitely help Elizabeth fight for the inheritance rights over Violet in the future. After all, the relationship between Elizabeth and Lionel was much closer than what he had had with Violet. Violet and Lionel had broken up 4 years ago. Their relationship was old news. Lionel probably even preferred Elizabeth over Chloe now. Joanna and Miranda agreed that having Lionel talk to Charles was a good idea. They decided to let Lionel and Charles get in touch first. Then, when the time was right, they could either negotiate or find an opportunity to make another move on Sylvia. In short, Miranda could not let Sylvia's baby be born. He wants a son, but he doesn't have that right, Miranda gritted her teeth. She hated Charles. Actually, you don't have to be too anxious. Miranda looked like she was going to lose it, so Joanna tried to comfort her. How can you say that? How can I not be anxious? You are just looking at me as a joke. You probably think this is all my fault, I bet. Miranda started. Mother, don't say that. Elizabeth cut Miranda off. Joanna was just trying to make you feel better. No one thinks this is your fault. Elizabeth was very good at talking, and the more Joanna observed her future daughter-in-law, the more satisfied she was with her choice. Naturally, she wanted to help her mother, Miranda. Look, first you transfer the Kingston Group's funds into your own pocket. Then even if Charles is the heir, he will have no value in the Kingston Group. It won't matter if Sylvia has her child, Joanna told her. You are oversimplifying things. It's not like he's the only Kingston family member. The first task is simply impossible. The second task is still possible, but it is also very difficult. After all, he is the heir of the Kingston family, Miranda told her. Isn't there Violet? Joanna asked. As long as Violet takes the position, Elizabeth and her sister Chloe can compete with her. After all, they are all descendants of the Kingston family, right? She suggested. Let Violet take the position? That won't do. Doesn't that mean that we have failed? Miranda snorted coldly, indicating that she could not accept this. You're not getting my point. Joanna shook her head, then tried to explain. Think about it, Miranda. If Charles becomes the head of the Kingston Group, your two daughters won't have any power. Charles's pursuit of a male heir has made it clear he values men more than women. But if you hand your power over to Lionel and then let Violet temporarily take control, then Chloe and Elizabeth could assume positions within the Kingston Group. Violet will find herself surrounded by enemies, and she'll have no choice but to eventually hand over her sovereignty. Your daughters will be able to work towards this goal from the inside. In the end, the person in charge of the Kingston Group will still be you, Miranda. This method can work. Miranda felt that Joanna's plan was indeed feasible, so she rushed to implement it. The very next day, she called an emergency board meeting. Some on the board resisted her proposal to elevate Lionel to a top management position. There were still people who disagreed, even when Miranda promised to withdraw herself from her current position to make way for Lionel to become the deputy director. In the end, Miranda used both soft and hard methods to get what she wanted. She even had to resort to using some incriminating information she had on several board members to blackmail them into voting the way she needed them to. Miranda was never above threats and bribes to get what she wanted. Of course, Miranda was relinquishing power in name only. She negotiated some benefits on her side, including ensuring that both Elizabeth and Chloe were given positions inside the company. When Chloe was feeling better, she would begin working in the Kingston Group as Lionel's assistant. As for Elizabeth, Miranda negotiated a consultant title for her. Her mother didn't think Elizabeth knew how to do anything, so it was just a hollow title. But Miranda knew plenty of people calling themselves consultants who no one really knew what they did all day. She figured it would be a good cover for Elizabeth and would give her access to the Kingston Group. A consultant role sounds perfect. I won't have any fixed responsibilities, so I can walk around the company and go where I need to, collecting information. I'm sure I can prove useful, Elizabeth proclaimed boldly. Yes, sure, whatever. We will talk about it more after Violet's situation is settled, Miranda told her. I have already begun to make preparations and obtained the will. Miranda, Elizabeth, and Joanna had met up to discuss the day's outcome. All three were relieved that things had gone well and Miranda had gotten what they wanted. Now that the first item on their new agenda was complete, the three of them could relax and start discussing their next move. Second on their agenda is how to find Charles and Sylvia's new address. Episode 302. Noah Wants Something. Noah's law firm had been robbed. The police had pulled the footage from the building's surveillance cameras and now had a suspect in police custody. Hearing this, Noah went to see Logan at the Smith Group. When he arrived at Logan's office, Corey was on the phone. Seeing it was Noah, he waved at him to come on in. Noah was one of the very few people who could see Logan without making an appointment first. Hearing Noah come in, Logan didn't even look up from the contract he was reading. "Go away, Noah, I'm busy," he remarked. "It's good to see you too, Logan. I'm so glad I had the time to stop by and visit." Noah sat down in one of the chairs across from Logan and put his feet up on the desk. "Get your feet off my desk," Logan announced. "Don't you want me to be comfortable? You haven't even offered me any refreshments. I could really use a coffee. I take 2 creams. Real cream, not that fake stuff." Noah grinned. Logan's sour mood didn't bother him at all. Logan threw down his pen and crossed his arms in front of him. "You have 30 seconds to tell me what you want. Then I'm calling security," he told him. "Why do you assume I'm here because I want something? Maybe I'm just here to chat." Noah acted offended. "Because I can tell you want something. And when have you ever known me to chat?" Logan raised his eyebrows at him expectantly. "Okay, fine. I'm here because I need your help," Noah conceded. "No." Logan picked up his pen again. "Since you know how to barge in, I'm sure you can show yourself out." Noah ignored him. "Actually, this has something to do with you." "It has nothing to do with me." Logan rolled his eyes at him. "I haven't even said what it was yet. And yes, it does have to do with you and Violet's lawsuit. I've set a trap, and the rat has wandered in to steal the cheese," Noah told him. "Why are you talking so much? Get to the point, Noah," Logan responded. "The point is, you told me that if I ever needed your help, to come to you. Here I am." Noah smiled and spread his arms wide. "I knew it." Logan shook his head and smiled. This was why he and Noah had remained friends since their school days. No matter how cold Logan was, Noah would just ignore him and make a joke. Noah was easygoing and calm, whereas Logan was difficult and hot-headed. Logan always respected people who weren't afraid to challenge him. That's one of the reasons Logan had initially been intrigued by Violet. She stood up to him and would even bicker with him. It was no surprise to Logan that Violet and Noah were friends. And now that Noah was secretly hooking up with Haley, Logan no longer even felt any jealousy over Noah's relationship with Violet. "Okay, tell me." Logan looked at him expectantly. "Remember how I mentioned the night of your birthday that someone had broken into my office? Well, the police went through the surveillance footage and have a suspect in custody. I need to borrow Mike. I want you to get him in to interrogate the man, and then offer him a deal," he explained. Logan remembered he'd thought the timing of Noah telling him about the burglary was odd. "Let me guess. You suspect Miranda is behind the robbery?" "Of course." Noah looked at him knowingly. "Especially since the only thing stolen was my copy of Kenneth's will, listing Violet as his sole heir. I let it slip a while ago to Elizabeth that I kept all of the evidence for my cases in my office safe," Noah elaborated. Elizabeth, again, Logan thought. She did seem to be more involved in the Kingston family affairs than he'd originally thought. "So you mentioned it knowing Elizabeth would run home and tell Miranda. I'm assuming that since this was intentional on your part, that the will is safe and was not the original?" he asked. Noah grinned. "Of course not." Oscar was nervous. He thought stealing the will from the lawyer's office would be an easy way to make a quick buck. He knew he should have been suspicious when Max Rutherford offered him so much money for a simple smash and grab. Now he was in police custody. The police hadn't said anything to him, They'd just thrown Oscar into an interrogation room to wait. When the door finally opened, Oscar saw a man he knew was not a police detective enter. The man was big and dressed in black. Oscar looked into his cold eyes and thought he looked very scary. The big man didn't identify himself, but instead began to tell Oscar why he was there. They knew he had been hired by Miranda. The man wanted him to lie to Miranda and tell her the job had been a success and that the will had been destroyed. If Oscar didn't agree, this man's employer would make sure he went away for a long time. My employer knows your associate, John. He suggested you two could be cellmates in prison. Oscar was scared to death. John was a hardcore felon. Oscar knew that the things he had done for the Rutherford family were small scale in comparison to John's crimes. Oscar had never hurt anyone. If he was given a severe punishment because of this, it would not be worth it. Plus, the big man said that if he cooperated, he would get a lighter sentence. All he had to do was lie to Miranda and then tell the cops everything he knew about the evil deeds committed by the Rutherfords and the Kingstons. Oscar knew this was an opportunity he couldn't pass up. He immediately started talking. He told the police everything he had done for Miranda's father, Max Rutherford, in the past, and how Miranda had promised to pay him a lot of money for the job at the lawyer's office. Oscar's deal was already in place when Miranda finally called. He told her the will had already been stolen and destroyed according to their instructions. Hanging up on the phone with her dad's man, Miranda immediately felt her confidence double. Since she had succeeded, it meant that Noah could no longer use Kenneth's will as evidence in Violet's lawsuit. Her father had already found someone to create a counterfeit will. Now, Miranda just needed to figure out the wording for the fake will. Unfortunately, Miranda knew the heir in this will must be Charles. After all, Kenneth had not been close to Chloe and Elizabeth. Miranda knew that if her daughters were to be listed as the heirs, it would definitely arouse suspicion. If that's the case, it can be stated in the will that if one day Charles is no longer suitable to be the director of the Kingston Group, then the 3 young ladies of the Kingston family can take charge of the Kingston Group together. What do you think? Joanna suggested. That's a good choice of words. That sounds very fair and reliable. Miranda clapped her hands and praised. Joanna had nothing to do at home, so every day she would go and see Miranda and Elizabeth. If Elizabeth was filming, Joanna would go shopping with Miranda. Occasionally, Joanna would go to the Kingston Group to observe, or she would pick Elizabeth up and go to the Smith Group to invite Logan for dinner. Logan refused every time, with Corey using the excuse of him having to work overtime. Still, Joanna and Elizabeth kept showing up. They would patiently sit in the lobby and wait for Logan to get off work. Corey was annoyed. The boss had already cut off all relations with Elizabeth. Why was she still unwilling to give up? She even dragged Logan's mother along to wait. Everyone in the company was talking about it. He knew that he needed to take action, or the boss would take his frustrations out on Corey. Therefore, before getting off work every day, Corey would let Mike go to Jay's studio to wait for Violet to get off work. After that, Mike would return to the Smith Group to pick up Logan and then take them back to Logan's house together. If there were social gatherings, it would also be Violet accompanying him. This way, Elizabeth would have almost no chance to pester Logan. Violet's work was going well. Every day she went to the studio and practiced songs. Jay basically spent half an hour chatting with her each time, talking about his latest ideas for the theme song. He even let Violet read the movie script so she could offer any suggestions she might have for the song. The movie's first press conference was next week. Garrett invited Violet and Jay to participate, without bothering to mention it to Logan. When Tom got the news, he hurriedly called Logan. At the same time, he swore that he would make sure Violet would outshine everyone and look absolutely stunning for her first public appearance. Episode 303. Violet's Dream House. Violet was nervous with her court date now looming. Since Logan had gone to the old residence to eat with Agnes and the children, Violet was home alone. Needing the distraction of company, she asked Zoe, Lee, and Henry to dine with her. When they were almost done eating, Logan sent a FaceTime request. It was probably because the children were missing their mother. Violet jumped up and called everyone over. The staff happily chatted with the children for a while. Adam and Amy, be sure when you come back this weekend to bring the puppies with you. We've bought them some surprises so that they'll be comfortable here, Zoe smiled. Since the twins were currently living in the old residence, and they were not together every day like before, Zoe and Lee really missed the children. When the two of them went shopping, they bought delicious treats and big comfy beds for the puppies, and wanted the twins to bring Kit and Kat with them when they next visited. The children happily agreed. After they hung up, Zoe and Lee chatted while they cleared the table. Technology is so advanced nowadays. We're getting old. I remember when phones still had cords, Lee joked. Zoe laughed and agreed. Plus, all the GPS stuff is so standard now. I heard that the Gardner family has a new line of super high-end GPS watches. I guess they decided that the rich needed a special watch just for them and their children. It's because they're afraid the children of wealthy families will be kidnapped. I guess after the kidnapping of their own family, the Gardners wanted to help other parents, Zoe remarked. Violet frowned. Could it be that Garrett was kidnapped when he was young? For no reason, Violet thought of the pink hair clip in Logan's closet. After dinner, Violet called Noah and asked him to help her figure out a way to buy the Kingston mansion now that Charles had put it up for sale. I don't know what the asking price is. Can you find out for me? Violet had access to some money, and if she didn't have enough, she hoped Logan would lend her the rest. When they signed their agreement, Logan had said that he would transfer money to her account every month. He'd given her a card to use to access it. Violet had no idea how much money was in her account by now. That card was lying in a drawer in Logan's bedroom closet. Violet had never used it before. After all, she rarely needed to spend money. Violet had decided she would go to the bank tomorrow to check her balance. Money is definitely not a problem, Noah told her. If Violet didn't have enough, he and Haley could loan her the rest. But if you want to buy it, you must not let Miranda know. Otherwise, no matter how much money you offer, she will not sell it to you, he suggested. Yes, you are probably right, Violet agreed. Miranda was just that petty. Don't worry, I'll arrange it. I'll call an agent I know in the morning, Noah promised. Don't tell Logan, Violet instructed. Why? What's wrong? I'm afraid he'll object. You know how he is, Noah. The man would be perfectly happy if I never left his house again. If I hadn't resisted, if it weren't for Garrett giving me the chance to work, I would still be wandering around his house, bored to tears every day like a fool, Violet responded. Noah chuckled. He knew Violet was right. That personality of his is indeed overbearing, he remarked. If he knew that I wanted to buy back the Kingston family mansion, I'm afraid he would stop me. The contract had not yet ended, and Violet didn't want to make Logan angry. Noah paused. He wanted to say something, but he held it in. He sighed and said, My investigators have almost found the details of the engagement your grandfather arranged for you. It is related to a kidnapping case from 20 years ago. When the investigation is complete and the man is revealed, what are you going to do? He asked. But I don't even know who this person is. If I take over the Kingston group with you and Logan, I won't need anyone else's help, Violet replied. This man would be a complete unknown to Violet. It was impossible for her to tie herself to a stranger just because of some engagement her grandfather had never even mentioned. Of course, Violet knew that back then, her grandfather wouldn't have said anything to her anyway, knowing that she was in a relationship with Lionel at the time. During that period of their relationship, her mind was filled with Lionel, and even her grandfather was at the back of the line. If her grandfather had mentioned this at that time, she would probably have exploded. Ironic that if Charles and Miranda had known, they could have used the information to sow discord between her and her grandfather. Violet rubbed her temples in frustration. I really can't think about this too. There's so much going on right now. Don't worry, Violet. I won't let you be forced into doing anything you don't want to do. When the time comes, we will know who it is, and we will deal with the man accordingly. Noah was concerned. He didn't want his friend to worry. You said the investigation was progressing. Do you have any idea when you'll find him? She knew Noah wouldn't have brought it up with her again if he didn't want her to mentally prepare herself. I promise I will tell you in advance when I have a definite result. It's meaningless to worry you right now. Be good. Rest well during this period of time. We still have a tough battle to fight in the future. Violet often said Noah was like a brother to her, but she wondered if a biological brother would be as considerate. I know, Noah. You also need to rest more. Don't tire yourself out because of my case. Violet was about to say something else, but she thought she heard someone call Noah's name. She couldn't tell if the voice was male or female. Violet wanted to ask him who it was, but Noah quickly said goodbye and hung up. Why did you call me? Violet almost heard you. Noah was nervous. Haley was using her alternate account to go online when she found that the internet was filled with the scandal of Elizabeth and Logan. Photos from their lunch at DeLuca's had found their way online. A photo of Joanna and Logan standing together at the restaurant's entrance was enough to ignite the scandal that Elizabeth and Logan were getting engaged. She'd wanted to tell Noah. What are you afraid of? She couldn't tell it was me. Haley smiled at him. And what if she had heard you? Noah teased. Then we'll figure out a way to fool everyone. Haley's mouth was confident, but when she saw Noah's burning gaze, she shyly pursed her lips and lowered her gaze. I see. Although Noah was not very satisfied given the current circumstances, he knew it was not a good time for them to announce their relationship. It would only distract Violet. He helplessly smiled and extended his hand to Haley. Okay, I will listen to you. Haley placed her hand on his palm and Noah pulled her to sit in his lap. The two of them hugged each other closely. Noah put his head on Haley's neck and breathed in her fragrance. The two of them didn't say anything else for a long time, and instead just enjoyed the moment of warmth. Finally, seeing Haley holding a tablet in her hand, Noah asked with interest, What were you looking at? Here, look. Haley showed the pictures to Noah. Elizabeth's fast, Noah said. The Kingston family obviously can't wait any longer. Elizabeth wanted to fight a public opinion battle. Haley agreed. You know, I've been thinking about it. I'm starting to wonder if Logan and Elizabeth ever really had a relationship. I wonder if all the stories and rumors posted about them in the past were orchestrated by the Kingston family. Logan has never admitted his relationship with Elizabeth, after all. When Violet first returned to L.A., Noah had been very worried. At the time, everyone thought that Logan and Elizabeth would definitely get married. Noah had believed he'd be going up against Logan when he tried to take back Violet's shares. Who would have thought Violet's problem would solve itself the way it had? Episode 304. Logan makes a statement. Haley suspected that Elizabeth and Logan had never had a real relationship. She now believed that the rumors online had all been the work of the Kingston family. Just like today's pictures of Logan and his mother at lunch with Elizabeth had sparked online stories that Elizabeth and Logan were about to get engaged, a story no doubt planted by Elizabeth herself. Noah was just relieved that whatever the nature of Logan and Elizabeth's relationship was, it had now ended. If Noah had to battle Logan as Elizabeth's future husband and backer, Violet's case against the Kingstons would have been a much harder, if not impossible, mission. Who would have thought that Violet's problem would be solved by Violet herself being in a relationship with Logan? Thinking about it now, Noah thought Haley was perhaps right, and Logan and Elizabeth had never had that kind of relationship. Maybe Logan had just been using Elizabeth to block other women hunting for a rich husband. What about now? What's the difference between Elizabeth and Violet? Noah calmly analyzed. Perhaps Logan is using Violet as well. Maybe he only sees their relationship as a useful, albeit enjoyable distraction, he reasoned. Haley nodded. What you're saying makes sense. That's why I want to see Logan's reaction to these latest stories about a pending engagement with Elizabeth. If his relationship with Violet is indeed special and different, Logan will naturally want to refute these latest rumors. If he thinks the online speculation doesn't matter, he definitely won't take action to defend his relationship with Violet, she stated. After all, Haley thought, Elizabeth had done this before. If Logan didn't say anything, then Elizabeth would manipulate this latest scandal endlessly. If Logan doesn't care, it won't do him any harm, but it would greatly benefit Elizabeth. So Logan's reaction this time would be very telling. While Noah watched, Haley scrolled through the online comments, growing increasingly irritated. When Logan declared that he wanted nothing to do with Elizabeth, some of Elizabeth's fans abandoned her. Now, these fair-weather fans were back, singing Elizabeth's praises while trashing Violet. They were posting that Logan had finally seen Violet's true colors and returned to his first love, Elizabeth. Violet had once again become the other woman. Haley was furious. She logged into her anonymous @Violet Kingston is my queen social media account and incited Violet's own fans to take action. Soon there was a fierce war of words on the internet. Take that, Elizabeth, Haley thought. Two can play this game. Suddenly, many verified users started to post statements to their accounts. These posts said that Elizabeth and Logan were just friends, that their families were business associates, which is why they'd been seen at lunch together. Even more shocking was these statements were attributed to Logan himself, that he had said he already had someone in his heart, and that he asked the media and public to respect his privacy and not spread wild rumors. Haley grew increasingly giddy as she read. It had to be him. She quickly searched for Logan's official social media account. When she found it, Haley squealed and gave the now very amused Noah an excited hug. Wow, he'd actually done it. Logan had defended his relationship with Violet. Logan posted an official statement saying that he had no romantic feelings for Elizabeth. He stated he already had someone else in his heart, so it was inconvenient and unnecessary for Elizabeth to reveal this information to the public. Further searching revealed that Garrett had also posted a photo of Joanna and Elizabeth with Logan and Garrett at DeLuca's restaurant. Garrett's photo proved that Logan and Elizabeth were not meeting their parents to discuss an engagement, but instead just enjoying lunch with family and friends, since Logan's mother was in town. The comments below were all LOL. The internet couldn't believe Logan had taken the time to officially comment. Things must be different with Violet. There were also a lot of comments discussing how young Logan's mother looked. Most of them were amazed by Joanna's youthful and beautiful appearance. Although there were faint lines on her face, she was still a great beauty that could not be defeated by time. Those who knew Joanna's backstory immediately started to explain in the comments what had gone on in the past. The love triangle of Christopher, Jackson, and Joanna was discussed and dissected. Some women called Joanna their hero, while others said she was just a shameless femme fatale. All agreed she was one of the most legendary women in Los Angeles. Joanna hadn't returned to Los Angeles for a long time. Finally, she'd regained some of her glory from the past. She put down her phone in satisfaction and sighed. Her youngest son was a really good boy. He knew how to do things and had a sweet mouth. He was also very considerate to her, his mother. Joanna's eldest son's bad and stubborn temper could not be compared with Garrett's. Despite her recent actions, Joanna still favored Garrett over Logan. It was only because she was competitive that Joanna refused to give up on Logan. That was why she had involved herself with Elizabeth and the others. Joanna thought that she had to learn from her past. She had made both Christopher and Jackson fall in love with her. There was no reason that Joanna couldn't make both of their sons also love their mother. There was nothing that she, Joanna, could not do. She had to take Logan down, no matter if it were just for her own interests or to save face, Joanna wouldn't allow her son to go against her. To declare that their lunch had nothing to do with Elizabeth was a challenge to her authority. Turning to Elizabeth, Joanna said, "My son Logan really knows how to make people angry. Elizabeth, I'm sorry he has wronged you all these years." "Forget it, Joanna. As long as I can once again take my place by Logan's side, I don't care about the past," Elizabeth told her. "Well, it's useless for him to deny it. We have plenty of time, and we're going to waste it with him," Joanna proclaimed. The second day after Logan denied bringing Elizabeth to meet his mother, Joanna had an idea and went to visit Elizabeth with her assistant. Joanna owned quite a few properties. Christopher had given them to her, and when she remarried to the Gardner family, Sarah Gardner had also gifted her some property. Although Joanna didn't manage them personally, she still had a lot of people and resources at her disposal. Today, she brought a few people to visit Elizabeth. Joanna arranged for a coffee cart and gourmet cupcakes to be brought in as a treat from her to the film's cast and crew. Although Elizabeth was not very popular, everyone loved free food and drinks, so the crew was thankful and pleasant. The male lead of the movie had previously starred with Elizabeth in another movie. The two of them were friendly with each other, so he joked and asked Elizabeth why her future mother-in-law was so good to her, and even came to visit. "Tell me your secrets. I'll use them on my girlfriend," he joked. "Are you crazy?" Elizabeth asked him. "Do you want to kill your career? Don't tell anyone you have a girlfriend." Actors relied on their fans for their success. If his female admirers found out he was in love, all his fans would abandon him. Elizabeth looked suspiciously at the boy in front of her. She remembered that he was quite close to Philly, so she smiled ambiguously and offered to treat him and Philly to a night out soon to have some fun with her. The boy's eyes lit up, and he readily agreed. "Anyway, as far as Joanna goes, she really can't bear to see me suffer. She told my mother that after this movie is finished, she wants me to focus on getting married and running our company," Elizabeth showed off. She knew that Philly had access to a lot of fresh meat. If the boy in front of her needed to please Philly, he would definitely listen to Elizabeth and help spread the word today. In the future, he might also be useful. Soon after their conversation, her male co-star spread the word, and soon almost everyone in the movie knew that Logan's mother was backing Elizabeth. Everyone assumed that she must be a front-runner for Logan's heart if his mother was now involved. After all, most sons loved and listened to their mothers. Episode 305. An Audience of One. Haley saw the articles starting to pop up online about Joanna's visit to Elizabeth's movie set. After buttering up the crew with free cupcakes and coffee, the cast and crew were now all posting about how Joanna seemed to have fully embraced Elizabeth as her future daughter-in-law. People figured if Logan's mom was now involved, Elizabeth must really have a chance with Logan. Plus, they had been together for 4 years. That was a lot of shared history to just forget. Elizabeth might as well have posted, "Your move, Haley." As she read the latest gossip, Haley sighed. There was a tiny piece of her that didn't disagree. Haley still did not completely trust Logan. She really wanted to at this point, but she couldn't completely forget that, even with Logan's obvious intelligence, he had, by some miracle, still been deceived by the Kingston family for 4 years. His track record for seeing Elizabeth for who she really wasn't great. Haley knew that despite Logan's statement denying everything, Elizabeth would not let this go so easily. After all, she had hooked up with Joanna, with her unlimited supply of cupcakes and coffee carts. Haley had to make good use of this opportunity. If she wanted Logan to come to completely despise Elizabeth, Haley had to prove to him once and for all of the evil things that the Kingston family had done, as well as Elizabeth's true colors. Haley had to take this slowly. She knew to gather the proof she needed, she would need time. However, she was not in a hurry. The Kingston family were the ones who should be worried. Their current power was no longer as strong as it once was. A lot would depend on the result of Violet's lawsuit. However, in Haley's heart, Elizabeth was synonymous with trouble. She knew she had the most potential to cause Violet grief, so Haley would have to monitor Elizabeth and her internet trolls closely. Just by looking at their actions, she could tell Elizabeth's motive. After collecting all the evidence and handing it over to Logan, Haley knew that he would believe her. What about the current situation? At the moment, Haley figured the most powerful counterattack was to make sure that Logan and Violet frequently appeared in public together. It didn't matter what they were seen doing, just that they were seen doing it together. Whether they were seen eating, getting coffee, or commuting to and from work was of no concern to Haley. As long as they appeared in public places and let people take pictures, even without any intimate actions, it would show people that the relationship between Violet and Logan continued. Luckily, Haley had Logan's character on her side. The more people there were to witness it, the more he liked to show off his desire to monopolize Violet. Haley didn't need to worry about there being any physical contact between them. She was afraid there would be too much. Haley sat in her office and considered all of her options. After Haley finished up some Lori group work, she called Priya to ask what Violet was currently doing. She hadn't visited Violet at the studio and wanted to come see her. Haley needed to have a good chat with Violet. Priya told Haley somewhat mysteriously that Garrett was at Jay's studio again. Haley could tell Priya was also nervous, and it didn't take much coaxing for the young woman to confess her concern. Actually, Haley could tell Priya was dying for her help. Logan had asked the assistant to keep an eye on Violet and report to him daily on what happened at the studio. Basically, he had asked Priya to be Logan's spy. She was afraid that Garrett would keep visiting, but she also didn't dare report this to Logan. "Haley, I'm afraid Violet will hate me if she finds out I've been spying. But I'm equally afraid Logan will fire me if I disobey him and don't tell him everything. I mean, what if because I don't say anything, Garrett and Violet develop feelings for each other? It would be all my fault. Haley, you've got to help me. Come to the studio. I'll tell Violet you're coming by to visit and get coffee with her. Naturally, you'll see Garrett. Then maybe you'll know what to do." Priya was practically begging her, so Haley agreed and said she'd come visit Violet. Actually, when she heard that Garrett was at Jay's studio again, Haley had already gotten an idea. Priya didn't even need to ask her. Haley already wanted to visit to put her plan into action. It seemed like Haley's boss had a bit of a crush on Violet. Priya hadn't told her anything Haley hadn't already noticed, just confirmed her suspicions. She'd seen the way Garrett kept looking at Violet during their lunch. Haley thought Garrett was an okay guy, just not the best guy for Violet. Violet and Logan already had children together, so Haley still felt that Logan was the best choice for Violet. Besides, Haley worked for Garrett. He was a good boss, but she didn't think he'd make a great boyfriend. She had witnessed firsthand his player ways. Logan, on the other hand, while grumpy, was a solid guy. Haley knew he would take care of Violet and the children for the rest of their lives. Haley called Garrett and told him that she wanted to visit Violet. Since she'd heard the boss was also there, she asked Garrett if he had time to meet with her and discuss some business matters. Afterward, they could grab dinner together or something. Garrett didn't think twice about Haley's call. She was Violet's best friend and his right-hand woman. Haley coming to Jay's studio to visit was not only natural, but expected. Of course Garrett wouldn't refuse. He was always thinking about how to get closer to Violet, and he figured having Haley there would be helpful. Garrett agreed and told her to come over right now. He wanted her insight on Jay's progress and Violet's working conditions. Maybe she'd have some suggestions. After Haley arrived, the first thing she did was take a photo of Violet and Garrett and immediately post it on her Instagram. Her real account, not her anonymous one. She added the caption, "I came to visit my good friend, and look who I ran into. I'm happy I get paid to grab a coffee with my bestie and boss." Although the photo seemed to be of the spur-of-the-moment variety, it had actually been carefully staged in Haley's mind. The afternoon sun was shining, and they were having coffee outside on Violet's dressing room balcony. Garrett and Violet were sitting together at the small bistro table talking with serious expressions. Violet was looking into Garrett's eyes, and her natural beauty was on full display under the winter sun. This was a woman who didn't need to resort to filters or Photoshop. She looked flawless without a stitch of makeup on, wearing a simple white sweater. For his part, Garrett looked every bit the handsome, suave businessman, and there was no ignoring Garrett's affectionate gaze as he looked back at Violet and smiled. If a photo could tell a story, this one stirred up a whole novel of speculation online, just as Haley had known it would. Wow, Garrett's so handsome. I wouldn't kick that man out of bed for eating crackers. He's Violet's perfect match. I'm totally shipping this new couple. Where's Logan? Logan, come quickly. Your bro is trying to steal your woman. Lol. Another day, another man for Violet. Yawn. Is there any man in LA she hasn't dated at this point? The Violet gossip quickly took over the speculation about Elizabeth and Logan. Garrett versus Logan and Battle of the Brothers were now the top trending topics on social media. Everyone seemed to have an opinion about which man Violet would choose in the end. The only one not speculating about her love life seemed to be Violet herself. She didn't look at social media and had no idea about this latest gossip storm. Violet didn't like to waste her valuable time online and tried to just ignore any gossip about herself when she did hear it. She felt she had more important things to worry about, like making the best song for Jay and her pending lawsuit for ownership of the Kingston group. Haley, however, gleefully watched the comments roll in. The reaction had been bigger and better than she'd even dared to hope. Her picture of Violet and Garrett in just a short amount of time had already been shared over 1 million times and was the top story on all the gossip sites. Everyone was talking about Garrett and Violet. Of course, while it seemed that practically everyone in Los Angeles had seen and commented on her photo, Haley, in truth, had only posted it for an audience of one. Now she just had to wait and see what Logan would do. Haley wouldn't have to wait long. Episode 306. Meeting adjourned. Logan was sitting in a meeting when he saw the alert flash on his phone. Bored with the presentation of charts and numbers he was already familiar with, Logan opened the message, and the first thing he saw was Violet's beautiful face. Momentarily mesmerized, Logan stared at the photo of her, the sun shining in her hair. The woman's beauty never failed to take his breath away. Unfortunately, he then noticed who was in the photo with her. Logan suddenly stood up, much to the surprise of everyone around the conference table. His CFO stopped speaking mid-sentence. Meeting adjourned, Logan announced. And with that, Logan stormed out of the conference room, leaving his entire executive team speechless. As he passed Corey sitting at his desk, Logan started barking instructions at him. Corey quickly followed him into his office, where Logan was already packing up his briefcase. "Is everything okay, boss?" Corey asked. "I'm leaving. Call Mike. Tell him to have the car downstairs in 5 minutes. I want you to handle the call with marketing at 5. Whatever you think is the best way to handle that situation is fine with me." Logan was already putting on his coat and shoving his wallet in his back pocket. The boss still hadn't told him what was going on, but Corey didn't dare repeat that question. "If something important comes up, will you be reachable by phone?" he tentatively asked. "Yes, but text me first so I can decide if it's truly important." And with that, Logan walked out of his office as fast as he'd walked in. Bewildered, Corey left Logan's office. Drake was at his desk reading his phone. "Did you see that? I wonder what's gotten into the boss," Corey asked him. Without saying a word, Drake turned his phone around and showed Corey the photo of Violet and Garrett. In the car, poor Mike was getting an earful from Logan. "Doesn't anybody in the Laurie group work? How does everyone at Jay's studio have the time to sit around and socialize? Is this worth the Smith Group's huge investment? Logan ranted in the car. Mike's face remained expressionless, and he just stepped on the gas. Logan was quite satisfied with Mike's reaction. Obviously, I've been too lenient and need to check on our investment, Logan continued to seethe. The boss had a lot to say today. Mike just nodded and didn't respond. Based on his experience, it was best not to speak at this time. It was best just to listen. When they arrived at Jay's studio, Logan was out of the car before Mike even put it in park. He breezed past the startled receptionist who buzzed him back without question. Logan took the stairs 2 at a time and then walked into Violet's dressing room. Violet was startled by Logan's sudden appearance. She had been talking to Haley about what type of outfit to wear to the press conference, when suddenly, there he was, scowling and looking generally irritated. "Logan, what a surprise! What are you doing here?" she asked him, still shocked. "I'm surprised you noticed I was here among all your other visitors," he said sharply. "Oh, yes, Haley came to visit me." Violet looked confused. "Hi, Logan," Haley called to him from the couch. She looked positively gleeful. Eyeing Haley suspiciously, Logan turned back to Violet. Violet tentatively took his hand as if he might bite her like a beast and looked up at him. Her eyelashes fluttered a few times. Looking into her eyes, Logan immediately began to soften. Her expression was exactly the same as Amy's. He knew he wouldn't be able to stay angry with her. Still, he needed answers. "Just Haley came to visit?" he asked her, raising an eyebrow. "Oh, well, Garrett's here too. He came to talk about the progress of the song. He's very concerned about us falling behind," she told him. "Really? The progress of the song? Is that all he's checking out?" Logan snorted coldly. "What are you talking about?" Violet bristled at Logan's obvious insinuation. Pulling him off to the side where Haley couldn't hear, she hissed quietly, "I'm just doing my job. Seems to me that there isn't much work going on around here. Just socializing." Logan did not believe it. He lowered his head and stared at Violet. Could he tell whether she was telling the truth or lying just by looking at her? At that moment, Jay appeared. He heard Logan was here and wanted to say hello. After some small talk, Logan began to calm down. Although their hands loosened, Logan still felt Violet's warmth on his hand after hers was gone. Logan rubbed his palm and smiled at Garrett, who had just appeared. "Everything okay at Lori Group, Garrett? Seems like you have a lot of free time on your hands," he taunted. Doesn't a good leader know how to hand responsibilities off to his subordinates? With good employees like Haley here, I have the freedom to go where I'm most needed. Garrett smiled at his brother. He knew Logan was irritated he was there. "What brings you here, Logan?" he asked calmly. "Violet and I have dinner plans. I came to pick her up." Logan put his hands in his pockets and looked relaxed. "Has Violet double-booked herself? Haley and I invited Violet to dinner with us, and she's already accepted." Garrett turned towards Violet. He did not intend to leave empty-handed. He definitely wanted to spend more time with her. Even if he couldn't make Violet feel anything for him, he could at least make Logan unhappy. When Logan was unhappy, Garrett was happy. Logan turned to look at Violet and raised his eyebrows. "Did you forget that we had made plans?" he questioned. "No, I'm sorry. It's all my fault. I was excited to see Haley and forgot," Violet stammered. There was no dinner appointment, but Violet knew if she didn't help Logan with the lie, she would hear about it later tonight. "Why don't we all go together?" Haley happily suggested. "Jay, can you join us?" she invited. "Unfortunately, no. I already have plans, but enjoy yourselves." With that, Jay made his retreat. He wanted no part in the battle of the brothers. Garrett waved his phone and said to Logan, "In order to eat with you guys, I had to reject an invitation from Lionel. See how much your company means to me," he remarked. Logan snorted. "You seem to be working with Lionel a lot lately." Lionel had been very close to Garrett recently. Logan had been trying to find out what they were plotting. He wondered if Lionel and Garrett were involved in recent events in the Smith Group. Your Smith Group doesn't do business with them. We, the Laurie Group, don't think that his business is too small. Garrett paused and was afraid that Violet would misunderstand. I'm talking about the Lawson Group, not the Kingston Group, he added. Violet and Logan glanced at each other without saying anything. It seemed that Lionel had been doing well the past few years, and the Lawson Group had gradually gotten back on track. Now they were in a partnership with Garrett. As long as Lionel stayed away from Violet, Logan didn't care what the man did. Dinner was at the Thai place on Melrose. After the media storm Haley had stirred up, the appearance of Logan, Garrett, and Violet in public together caused a paparazzi frenzy. Joanna saw their pictures and was unhappy. After thinking about it, she decided Elizabeth needed to be seen as well. Go out and play, go get a drink, Joanna urged. Why? I thought you wanted me to avoid those types of places. Elizabeth was confused. Well, you need to go out drinking, so we can use my method, Joanna explained. What method? Elizabeth lowered her voice and leaned closer to her. How good would it be if Joanna was her mother? She could learn so much from this woman. Joanna saw that Elizabeth was humbly asking for guidance, so she naturally told Elizabeth her idea. Elizabeth was hesitant. Do you think it will work? She asked. You need to try. I don't believe that my son is so cold and heartless. If he really doesn't care, then I will put pressure on him. No matter what, I am still his mother, she stated. So at Joanna's insistence, Elizabeth grabbed her handbag and called for her assistant, Anita. She slipped the membership card, given to her by Garrett, into her bag and called a taxi. Elizabeth was going to Risque. Episode 307. Noah's Night Out. Haley had wanted to stand up and cheer when she saw Logan storm into Violet's dressing room. She'd only posted the photo of Violet and Garrett a short time ago. Logan must have reacted and left work the moment he saw it. All from just one picture. His actions proved to Haley how important Violet was to Logan. Haley felt even more confident that the two of them had a real chance at a future together. Dinner was understandably tense. Only Haley seemed to be enjoying herself. Logan and Garrett barely spoke, and when they did, it was to snipe and take shots at one another. Haley thought a few times the two of them might have come to blows if Violet hadn't been there to quietly mediate. By the end of the meal, poor Violet looked exhausted. By the time they finished eating, word had leaked that they were there, and the paparazzi had gathered outside. Given the media storm that day about the state of their relationships, photos of Logan and Violet and Garrett together were hot commodities. Flashbulbs went off the second they stepped outside. Mike quickly ushered Logan and Violet into his car, and they swiftly drove off. Garrett was headed to Risque and asked if Haley wanted to join him. She politely begged off, saying she was tired and ready to call it a night. So instead he dropped Haley off at Jay's studio so she could get her car before Garrett headed to his members-only club. Garrett was the owner of Risque and went there several times a month to check on his business. Garrett was a player and loved a night out, but he preferred an establishment he didn't own when he truly wanted to let loose. Of course, Garrett was careful to avoid any of the clubs Logan owned. He wasn't worried about running into his big brother. Other than socializing for work, Logan rarely went to clubs or bars. Even the clubs that he owned, Logan seldom set foot in. Still, Garrett after hours didn't want to think about his brother, or what his brother was doing at home with Violet. He couldn't ignore the surge of jealousy he'd felt when he'd watched Logan and Violet leave together. When Haley arrived home, she changed into a tank top and leggings and piled her hair on top of her head in a messy bun. She hoped that she would be seeing Noah later that night. Haley had been so busy with Violet's love life that she hadn't had a chance to talk to Noah since that morning. Haley shot him a text, telling him to call her when he could, then grabbed her laptop and a glass of wine. Plopping on her couch, Haley scrolled through her feed to see the latest reactions to the Violet, Garrett, Logan love triangle. Her picture of Garrett and Violet had been shared endlessly, and the speculation surrounding it had effectively silenced all the talk of a pending engagement between Elizabeth and Logan. Haley felt that she had won the day's online public relations battle. Take that, Elizabeth, Haley thought with amusement. Haley was happy to see that the paparazzi pictures of Garrett, Logan, and Violet at dinner together were already cropping up online. The internet didn't waste any time. Everyone was discussing who Logan liked, whether Garrett and Violet had any feelings for each other, and who Violet would choose in the end. There was also some discussion of where Elizabeth fit into this messy love triangle, and how Violet's lawsuit would impact the outcome. If Violet wins the lawsuit, she'll be head of the Kingston group. How can Elizabeth compare to that? But Elizabeth is Logan's first love. They have 4 years of shared history. What do you mean by first love? Violet and Logan already have children who are 5 years old. They got together before Elizabeth. If you ask me, Elizabeth is a real homewrecker. The online debate was lively. Just as Haley was about to jump into the discussion anonymously, Noah called. Haley immediately put down her laptop to chat with Noah. It was time to pay attention to her own love life. He told her that Garrett had called and asked Noah to meet him at Risque tonight. Haley frowned. That's strange. I just had dinner with Garrett and he didn't mention anything. He even asked me if I wanted to go to the club tonight, she told him. Maybe he just thought of the idea. Anyway, I know he's been wanting to talk to me about negotiating some entertainment contracts for Lori Group. Hopefully I won't be too late. I'll call you when I'm done and see if you're still up, he stated. No need to call. Just come over. Use the key I gave you, Haley said flirtatiously. Noah readily agreed, and both of them were smiling wide when they ended the call. After he hung up with Haley, Noah went to meet Garrett. When Noah arrived at Risque, there were already a few people in Garrett's private room. 2 of them Noah didn't know, probably Garrett's friends. After greeting him, they wandered off to have fun. The other 2 guests Noah did know. Anna and her close friend Mina were sitting with Garrett. After greeting him and shaking Noah's hand, Garrett told him, Anna is starting work at Smith Group in a few days. She came out to relax before starting her new job. Hello, Noah, Anna greeted him from her seat beside Garrett. She clearly only had eyes for him. Noah could clearly see Anna's infatuation with Logan's brother. Mina was trying her best to find a topic to divert Anna's attention away from Garrett. It wasn't an easy task. With Garrett beside her, it was as if everyone else had ceased to exist. Hey, Anna, Garrett tells me you start work at Smith Group this week. Are you nervous? Noah asked her. I'm quite nervous. You know my big brother's temper. Anna stuck out her tongue. She was still a child in so many ways, Noah thought. When she faced Logan, of course she would be nervous. You're going to work in Logan's office? He asked. Yes, my grandma asked me to help my brother now that Violet's no longer with Smith Group, she replied. Agnes felt that working as Logan's secretary would be good for Anna. Even if she wasn't much help to Logan, she was his sister. Agnes figured at least there would be no messy romantic entanglements, like in the past. She would be safe with Corey and Drake. But with Anna's state of being completely devoted to Garrett, Agnes didn't know how long Anna could stay in the company and work. Noah pursed his lips. This was someone else's family matter. He should mind his own business. Noah just smiled and wished Anna good luck, but he had some doubts. Garrett had never shown any interest in Anna. Why did he suddenly bring Anna out to play when she was about to start working at Smith Group? Hopefully there were no other intentions behind this. He wondered if Logan knew. Garrett and Noah chatted amicably. Garrett was prepared to hand over the artist contracts in the Laurie Group's entertainment division to Noah to manage. But Noah was already in charge of the Smith Group's artist roster. "You don't mind? Aren't you afraid that I will do something inappropriate?" Noah asked. "I wouldn't be asking you if I did. I trust your character. There's precedent for an arrangement such as this. Besides, our two companies have separate artists, so there's not really any overlap. It will be fine," Garrett insisted. Taking advantage of the time when Garrett went to the men's room, Noah texted Logan to ask his opinion. Logan's response came quickly, and it was typical Logan. "Logan, why are you bothering me with this? My brother might be a bastard, but his money is still green. Only a fool would turn this down. Do it, and stop bugging me." Noah smiled and shook his head. Looks like he'd be working for Garrett. Episode 308. At the club. After getting Logan's typically testy reply that Noah would be a fool to reject the Laurie Group's offer, Noah decided that there was no good reason for him to turn Garrett down. Despite his close friendship with Logan, Noah had always had a good relationship with Garrett. Plus, Haley spoke highly of Garrett as a boss. If Noah ever had a concern, he could always talk to Haley about it. So Noah agreed to take Garrett up on his offer. "Good, I'm glad. I wasn't sure if you were going to accept. I hope you don't have any prejudice against me because of my brother," Garrett told him. "I can assure you that's not a concern. I'm a professional and treat all of my clients equally. Besides, personally, you and I have always gotten along well." Noah pushed up his glasses. Garrett nodded and slapped Noah on the shoulder. He was quite satisfied. "Great, then I won't put you under any pressure. Let's have a good working relationship." Garrett had achieved his goal. He'd recruited Noah. To Garrett, this was personal, although he didn't say anything to Noah. Whether it was the company or people, Garrett wanted what Logan had. Garrett really didn't understand why his mother thought so highly of his brother. After returning to Los Angeles, she had been spending all of her time trying to build a good relationship with Logan. Joanna had even taken the initiative to befriend the Kingston family. She had been inseparable from Elizabeth and Miranda. As far as Garrett was concerned, she had really lowered her status. Garrett's grandmother also wasn't happy. She had been in a bad mood since Joanna's arrival. Initially, Sarah was very satisfied with her son's choice of a wife. After all, Joanna was quite capable, and it was because of her that Garrett was able to develop the Laurie Group to its current scale. However, after returning to Los Angeles, Joanna devoted all of her attention to Logan. Garrett was sure that his grandmother was planning something. It didn't help that Joanna didn't like Anna. Now that she was back, Anna never came to the Gardner residence to visit. Although Garrett was happy to have some free time, it was an obstacle to their plans, which is why he'd invited Anna out tonight. As long as he gave her a smile and a little attention, Anna was like a moth to the flame, returning to his side. Forget it. Garrett could be patient. When the time came, he would let everyone see what a joke Logan really was. He couldn't wait. That night, Elizabeth was also at Risque, although she didn't run into Garrett. Elizabeth had originally gone into the club to drink some wine and be seen. Joanna wanted her to be photographed, looking as if she was drinking to relieve her worries. She'd arranged for one of her press contacts to be there to take pictures of her, although Elizabeth would deny this if ever asked. Once she knew the photographer had gotten what he needed, Elizabeth prepared to leave. But as she was about to head home, she received a call from Philly. It turns out that Philly was also at the club and wanted Elizabeth to come join her. Originally, after the accident with Logan at the hotel, Elizabeth's relationship with Philly had come to an end. Although Philly was a popular person, she did not have a good reputation, and Elizabeth wanted to avoid any guilt by association. She knew Logan would be suspicious of her relationship with Philly, so she had to be careful. Elizabeth's assistant, Anita, had been happy when Elizabeth cut ties with Philly. Anita had never trusted her, so she was glad her boss no longer needed her help. But when Elizabeth thought of Philly's connections, she decided to meet up with her, despite all this. After all, they had quite a good time together. She brought Anita along, and Philly arranged a private room for Anita and the rest of the assistants. Philly, Elizabeth, and a group of Philly's C-list celebrity friends were given access to the VIP room. Elizabeth was thrilled to let loose and party with her friends. She had missed this. They got bottle service comped and had fun drinking and dancing for hours. As the club's closing time approached, Joanna called Elizabeth and told her that she had contacted Logan. Joanna had explained to him that Elizabeth had gone out drinking to relieve her worries and was now drunk. She told him that Elizabeth's situation was dangerous and asked Logan to pick her up. Elizabeth immediately went downstairs to wait for Logan. Elizabeth anxiously waited for more than half an hour, but there was no sign of Logan. Was he not coming to pick her up? Her mood grew steadily worse as she watched people on the dance floor start to disperse and go home. The club was starting to empty out. When the bouncers turned on the lights and announced it was closing time, Elizabeth finally accepted that Logan wasn't coming to pick her up. Elizabeth couldn't stay any longer, so she went back upstairs to the VIP room dejectedly. Philly asked her what was going on, and she told Philly about Joanna's failed plan. "Seems like Logan's mother really likes you," Philly observed. "Of course. She's basically decided that she wants me as her daughter-in-law, but unfortunately Violet is still in the picture," Elizabeth said glumly. "What? Do you still think that you have to be the only woman in the man's heart?" Philly shook her head. "Elizabeth, please. Even ordinary men can't be faithful, and Logan is far from ordinary. In ancient times, a wealthy and powerful man like Logan would have had like 8 or 10 wives, plus probably a harem full of backup women," she told her. "Not happening," Elizabeth shook her head. "Although I don't mind him having a mistress, it certainly can't be Violet." As long as Elizabeth was officially Mrs. Logan Alexander and got all the power, prestige, and wealth that came with that title, she didn't care if Logan hooked up with other women on the side. But Violet was different. She was her cousin and her family's enemy. No way would Elizabeth share Logan with that traitor. "Just pretend that you don't care about Violet at first," Philly suggested. "Then after you marry Logan, if you want to deal with her then, I'm sure your mother or Joanna would know someone to help you get rid of her. At that time, you could at least justify your actions as revenge on the other woman." Philly shrugged. This seemed like a good plan to her. Elizabeth decided Philly's words made a lot of sense. She told her she would think about it. Feeling better, Elizabeth decided to join Philly and her friends at an after-party at a private home in the Hollywood Hills. It was almost dawn when Elizabeth finally returned home. Miranda had called a few times, but Elizabeth hadn't been checking her phone. So when she got home, she saw that Miranda's room was still lit up. So she knocked on the door and entered. Miranda had finally dozed off, but woke up when Elizabeth came in. She explained to her mother where she had been and why she hadn't replied to her messages. Miranda knew that she had been out drinking and socializing. She didn't say anything but just told her daughter to be careful. Although she had Joanna backing her now, if Elizabeth went too far and got caught in a compromising position, Miranda was afraid that Joanna wouldn't be able to help her if she created a scandal. "You must not let anything happen to you. Understand? Your sister is out of commission for who knows how long. I can't lose you, too." Recent events had taken their toll on Miranda, and she looked visibly haggard. "Mom, you should also take care of yourself. Go to a spa, get a massage and a facial, try to get more sleep. Don't keep thinking about all these troublesome things. I don't believe that Dad really wants to divorce you," Elizabeth stated. "Of course he does. Don't be naive, Elizabeth. Our repeated plans have all failed. I already fell out with him a long time ago. You need to prepare yourself. We can't stay in the Kingston mansion forever. We need to move out as soon as possible," Miranda responded. Elizabeth couldn't believe her parents were really going to get a divorce. She'd really thought that something would happen to stop it. Now she was concerned. She wasn't upset as a daughter whose parents were splitting up. Elizabeth was too selfish to care about that. She cared about how this would impact her own financial future and plans. If Miranda divorced Charles and he became the heir, where would that leave Elizabeth? Episode 309. Violet gets her day in court. Elizabeth couldn't believe her parents were really going to get a divorce. Despite her father's cheating, she never thought Miranda would really let the divorce happen. After all, her mother wasn't the Kingston. Charles was. If he inherited and made his unborn son the heir, where would that leave Elizabeth? Her mother, however, now seemed certain that the divorce would happen and was already making plans. "Before we divorce, we have to make sure we take care of our own financial interests. I don't care what we have to do to make that happen." Miranda gritted her teeth in anger. But that's my dad," Elizabeth said. No matter what, whether Charles valued men more than women or not, he was still Elizabeth's father. Miranda, on the other hand, was a member of the Rutherford family. She still wanted Nora or Paige to give birth to Lionel's child. At this point, Elizabeth felt that Miranda was not putting her own daughter's best interests first. Chloe could not give birth. If Nora or Paige had Lionel's child, would Lionel still side with Elizabeth and Chloe in the future? That would be impossible. He would definitely have to listen to Miranda and the Rutherford family. "What father?" Miranda spat. "When has he ever put you and your sister first? He knocked up another woman because he only wanted a son to inherit, not his own daughters. He never wanted you and Chloe to take over management of the Kingston group. Why are you still thinking about that scumbag?" she roared. "There's no other way? You have to divorce?" Elizabeth asked. "I don't want to either, daughter. Do you think this is what I want it to happen?" Miranda smoothed her hair back and frowned at Elizabeth. "No matter what, we will not lose the Kingston group. Don't worry," she assured her. "How can you be so sure of that?" Elizabeth was a little excited. "Court is about to start. We are closer to losing the Kingston group to Violet than we ever have been. You have to do something, Mother." "What are you afraid of, Elizabeth? The will has been destroyed. What proof can Violet offer now?" Miranda sneered. What if Noah has figured out another way?" Elizabeth still had some inexplicable uneasiness. Things weren't the same anymore. In the past, even if Logan did not like her, he had still tacitly agreed to protect her and her family. But now, it had been proven that she was not the woman from 4 years ago. Violet was. Logan had said he'd stay neutral, but would he? The 4 years of their relationship probably meant nothing to him. In any case, they were imposters. They might need to rely on Lionel and Garrett's backing at this critical moment. "I'm not afraid of Noah Smith. Don't worry, daughter. We will definitely have the last laugh," Miranda promised her. "All right, then. I'll listen to you, Mother. You've gotten us this far." Elizabeth was still nervous, but had no other choice at this point but to listen to her mother. That's true. If it weren't for me, our family would have imploded many years ago. Miranda smiled complacently. Where's my brother-in-law? Did he stay with Chloe tonight or come home? Elizabeth needed to set aside her worries, and she immediately thought of Lionel. He's home. He's probably still asleep, but should be getting up soon for work, Miranda told her with a yawn. Elizabeth jumped up happily. Great. When he gets up, I'll go and ask about my sister. Yes, go. After you're done, get some sleep yourself. Your sister is being discharged from the hospital tomorrow. Come back early for dinner tonight. The house is now on the market. Many people have made inquiries already. The agent thinks she will have some written offers soon. Our family can discuss it tomorrow night. I already mentioned it to Lionel, as I want his opinion, Miranda informed her. Chloe is being discharged from the hospital? Elizabeth was stunned. Why so soon? With Chloe around, how would she and Lionel find the opportunity to be together? Don't you miss your sister? Miranda frowned. This girl only wanted to have fun. Elizabeth hadn't even visited Chloe in the hospital recently. Pay more attention to your sister. You know that she has suffered a lot this time, Miranda told her. Elizabeth smiled. Oh, I know, Mother. I was just surprised, that's all. Good night. Elizabeth had been smiling, but her face changed the moment she walked out of Miranda's room. Chloe has suffered a lot? Elizabeth snorted coldly. Everything that had happened to Chloe, she had brought on herself through her own ineptitude. And look what Chloe had done to their family. The Kingston family had so many scandals, and their reputation in Los Angeles had dramatically fallen. This time, not only did Chloe's plan not affect Violet, but it had led to the exposure of their father's affair. Although Charles was not a very good father, in the past, he'd at least still cared about his reputation. Now, he didn't care about anything but his mistress and his unborn son. He was going to divorce Miranda. This directly caused Elizabeth and Miranda's interests to be damaged. Everything was all Chloe's fault. The more Elizabeth thought about it, the more she felt that Chloe was not good enough for Lionel. If they wanted Lionel to continue working for the Kingston Group, Elizabeth would have to see to this herself. In the end, the Kingston family could only rely on Elizabeth. Violet's day in court had finally arrived. To the rest of Los Angeles, it was just a typical sunny Thursday. But for Violet and the Kingston family, the day was far from typical. All of their fates now hung in the balance, and Violet, for one, was very nervous. Haley had naturally come to court to support Noah and Violet. Logan was waiting back in his office for Corey to send him live reports. He had decided he would be a distraction if he showed up, so Logan had to let Corey attend on his behalf. Court was called to order, and both sides gave opening statements. Noah stated the facts of the case, and the trust Kenneth Kingston had placed in him to see his final wishes granted. The Kingston family listened to Noah, but what he said was not new to them. Noah had said all of this the night of the Kingstons' banquet. However, at the time, the Kingstons didn't take his words seriously. Charles was Kenneth's son, and he had already taken over the Kingston Group. They had thought Violet would have no chance of winning her case. At that time, the Kingston Group still had the support of the Smith Group, who knew that not long after that banquet, the Kingston family would encounter such tremendous change. Elizabeth had lost Logan to Violet. Charles and Miranda were about to get a divorce. So much had happened that now it was really unknown who would win the inheritance. After the two sides made their opening arguments, Miranda's lawyer requested that Kenneth Kingston's will be entered into evidence. Noah rose to speak. Smiling, he explained to the judge that he did not have the document with him and could not enter it into the record at this time. Miranda completely relaxed when she heard Noah's excuses to the judge. What did this mean? It meant that the will was definitely gone. Miranda whispered a few words to her lawyer, after which he immediately rose to speak. Her lawyer objected and said that Noah was trying to deceive the court and that he did not have Kenneth Kingston's will in his possession. He claimed that Violet's side was lying and that there was no will listing her as Kenneth's sole heir. The lawyer said that this was a frivolous lawsuit filed by Violet Kingston to take advantage of the situation. He then called Miranda to the stand. After swearing under oath that she was there to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, Miranda began her testimony. There has never been a will listing Violet Kingston as Kenneth's sole heir. This is just a poor relation's attempt to stab a knife into our family. This is cheating and a crime. My father-in-law was angered to death by my niece. She has nothing to back up her claim that she is the sole heir. Who would believe this? Miranda said with a sneer. Turning to look directly at Violet, Miranda pointed and said, My niece is a liar, and I can prove it. Episode 310. Order in the Court. The courtroom erupted when Miranda proclaimed on the witness stand that she could prove that Violet was lying about being the rightful heir of the Kingston group. People were whispering loudly in the gallery, and the reporters in attendance scribbled furiously in their notebooks. The judge banged her gavel and called out loudly, Order in the court! While the judge tried to quiet the room so the proceedings could resume, Miranda looked over at Violet and Noah, who remained silent. She secretly laughed at how useless they both were. Why was Noah just sitting there? Why was he not saying anything? Noah was going to lose Violet's case, and he was going to lose badly. And yet, he remained calm and stoic. Miranda smiled a cold smile. Why had Miranda ever been concerned about Violet and her second-rate lawyer? Miranda thought Noah's reputation as a talented litigator was apparently nonsense. He was no better than a used car salesman trying to bluff his way into stealing the inheritance for Violet. After the courtroom finally settled, Miranda resumed testifying. Anyway, I don't believe Violet. Why would a father choose his granddaughter as his heir over his own son? It makes no sense to me. Miranda shook her head as if in utter disbelief before continuing. And besides, we all knew what my father-in-law really thought of Violet. It's because of her that Kenneth is no longer with us. Violet angered him to death. Objection, hearsay, Noah called out as he stood. Can the witness provide proof that Kenneth Kingston was angered to death by his granddaughter, Violet Kingston? He questioned. Everyone in Los Angeles knew about it at the time, Miranda sniffed. That was just the news you deliberately released, Mrs. Kingston, Noah replied smoothly. But can you provide proof that this was in fact Mr. Kingston's opinion of my client? He argued. The friends and associates of the Kingston family, observing in the courtroom gallery, murmured and looked at one another. They thought after listening to Noah's questions that what he said made sense. No one could ever recall anyone in the Kingston family offering any proof that Violet caused her grandfather's death. It seemed that these rumors about Violet could very well have been part of a carefully orchestrated campaign intended to turn public opinion against Violet. The Kingstons had let the people in their circle keep shaking their heads when they talked about Violet, and never did anything to correct the rumors about her. Could it be because they were the ones that had started them? Violet sat quietly observing the proceedings. She knew Miranda was committing perjury on the witness stand. She was lying, and Violet feared people would believe her. This wasn't just about taking back the Kingston group. Violet knew that Miranda and Charles were the ones responsible for her grandfather's death. Violet closed her eyes for a moment and remembered what she had overheard her aunt and uncle say that terrible day. She had to avenge her grandfather. But without any evidence, no one would arrest Miranda and Charles based on Violet's words alone. Noah gently touched Violet's shoulder to comfort her. He was still standing, waiting for Miranda to answer the question. Noah knew this was it. Miranda had a motive when she'd sent her man to rob his office, and he suspected he was about to find out what it was. Sure enough, Miranda's lawyer quickly produced a new piece of evidence. Holding up a document, her lawyer stated, "To help my client answer counsel's question, I would like to enter into evidence the last will and testament of Kenneth Kingston, signed and dated on the day of his death." There were audible gasps in the courtroom, and the gallery of onlookers broke out into excited chatter. Reporters ran out of the room in a bid to be the first to break the story of the new will. The judge banged her gavel again, calling for order. Noah and Violet looked at each other, but didn't say anything. The evidence Miranda provided was a will written by Kenneth Kingston on the day of his death. Her lawyer requested it to be read in the record, and Noah had no objections. The court reporter read the will aloud to the anxious courtroom. The will clearly stated that it was Kenneth Kingston's final wish that his son, Charles Kingston, be named his heir and successor at the Kingston Group. If Charles were unable to fulfill his duties, or, by his own negligence, hurt the interests of the company, then his position would be revoked. In such an event, the Kingston Group shares would be evenly distributed between Kenneth's 3 granddaughters, Chloe Kingston, Elizabeth Kingston, and Violet Kingston. At that time, the 3 women would take over the Kingston Group together. The inclusion of Violet as a backup successor to Chloe and Elizabeth raised quite a few eyebrows. Originally, everyone thought the revealing of this will was quite suspicious. But in the end, the general consensus, in and outside of the courtroom, was that the will must be real. Everyone figured if it was a fake, why would Miranda have included the provision stating that Violet be included in the line of succession? Wouldn't Miranda just be making trouble for herself? Thus, most people concluded that the will was not a forgery. No one seemed to question why the Kingstons had not produced the will, until now. Listening in the galley, Corey felt that the issue of the will could be a problem. After the judge announced that the court would adjourn so that the will could be examined, Corey called Logan to fill him in on the morning session. Logan stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows in his office and listened to Corey's report. However, instead of expressing concern, Logan just thanked him and asked Corey to bring Noah and Violet to the hospital to see George. He had finally woken up. Logan told Corey he would meet the 3 of them at the hospital and asked him to have lunch so they could all eat together. Violet was feeling a little anxious. She didn't know what kind of outcome she would be facing later. Her only comfort was that Noah didn't seem concerned. Despite Miranda's revelation, Noah was calm and confident as always. Logan had spoken to Corey. He wanted Corey to bring Violet and Noah to the hospital to see the now awake George. They would have lunch together at the hospital. Violet's stomach was in nervous knots, so she wasn't in the mood to eat, but she definitely wanted to visit George. She followed Corey and Noah, who were talking quietly, out to the car. Mike drove while Corey ordered their lunch. When they arrived at the hospital, Logan was already there waiting for them. He stood at the door of the ward, wearing a gray suit and a blue tie. Logan stood tall and strong. Those who didn't know any better would think that he was some big movie star. Violet saw him turning towards her, and realizing she had been staring, she quickly shifted her gaze. Logan had been making small talk with George's doctor, while he waited for Violet and the others to arrive. Since Logan owned the hospital, he was quite familiar with many of the doctors on staff, and the hospital director had been his father's friend. Central Hospital was Logan's personal investment, but he knew not everyone was aware of this. If something were to happen at the Smith Group, Financially relying on the hospital and his own private investment portfolio wouldn't be a problem. Logan looked up and saw Violet and the others walking out of the elevator towards them. "Logan," Noah waved to him as they approached, but Logan only had eyes for Violet. Even though he had woken up next to her only a few hours ago, it felt like he hadn't seen Violet in a very long time. "Violet," Logan tipped his head in greeting. Stopping in front of him, Violet looked up and gave him a small smile. "Logan?" She sounded a little nervous. Logan's expression immediately changed. Although his face remained cold, his eyes were warm as he returned Violet's gaze. Why did Logan's name always sound so much better when Violet was saying it? Episode 311. These are all my friends. Court had adjourned until later this afternoon, and Corey, Noah, and Violet had just arrived to meet Logan at the hospital. George had finally woken up, and Violet was anxious to see him. Violet looked at Logan standing in front of her. "When did George wake up?" Violet asked him. "Ask Dr. Warner." Logan lifted his chin, indicating a tall woman standing nearby. Violet looked over at the doctor expectantly. "He woke up this morning and was quite confused and agitated. We gave him a nutrient solution and extra fluids, along with a sedative to calm him. He should be resting comfortably now," Dr. Warner told her. Violet breathed a sigh of relief. The private hospital suite Logan had arranged for George was large and warmly lit. Jimmy, who had been George's private nurse since he had first arrived at Central Hospital, had just finished swapping out his patient's IV bag when they all walked into George's room with the doctor. Dr. Warner smiled at him. "Jimmy, you can leave on your break now. Take your time. We will stay here with George." The nurse hurriedly nodded and agreed. The young man grabbed his backpack and prepared to go out to eat. Logan stopped the nurse. "Wait a moment." Logan motioned to Corey. Corey took a few bills out of his wallet and handed them to Jimmy. "Thank you for taking such good care of George. We appreciate it," Corey said. "No, really, there's no need for that. This is what I do," Jimmy insisted, waving his hands. He was an honest guy, just trying to do a good job. Jimmy kept glancing over at Logan as he tried to wave off Corey's money. Logan was an intimidating figure. The man just stood there, coldly arrogant. He made Jimmy nervous. Therefore, he kept rejecting Corey, not daring to take his money. Corey insisted, and Violet also tried to persuade him. Jimmy looked over at Dr. Warner. She nodded, indicating it was okay for Jimmy to take the money. The nurse finally took the bills from Corey, but continued to look uncomfortable. Jimmy thanked him and then quickly exited. Although Violet was grateful to Logan for being thoughtful, she decided she needed to have a good talk with him later. Even when the man was trying to be nice, his arrogant and cold attitude scared people off. Not everyone knew Logan as Violet did. Looking over, she saw Logan standing in front of George's hospital bed, with his arms folded across his chest. His current scowl and complete lack of bedside manner only validated what Violet had just been thinking. She rolled her eyes at Logan and walked to George's bedside. Logan was baffled by Violet's reaction. What had he done to offend the woman now? He frowned and felt that Violet's temper had gotten worse recently. In the past, she wouldn't have dared to be so impudent in front of him, he thought unhappily. He decided he needed to have a good talk with her later. Violet clearly wasn't appreciating all the goodwill Logan was extending to her. As Logan stared coldly at Violet, the old man on the bed opened his eyes. George squinted and closed them again, overwhelmed by the brightness of the room. He opened and closed his eyes again and again, until the room finally started to come into focus, and he left them open. George looked slowly at the people around him, until his eyes stopped on Violet. After seeing Violet, George couldn't see anything else. Young Ladies. George tried to speak, but his words came out jumbled and were hard to understand. Gazing at Violet, the old man's eyes were instantly filled with tears. Trembling, he wanted to reach out his hand to Violet. The young lady was not dead. His young lady was alive and well. He didn't expect to see the young lady again in this lifetime. Don't move. George, don't move. I'm here. I'm here. Violet quickly pressed his hand down. He was hooked up to an IV and a heart monitor. George shouldn't be trying to move. Violet repeated gently, "Don't move, George. Don't move. Your body is not healed yet." Violet wiped away her tears. She hadn't realized she had started crying. She tried to stop the tears. Shouldn't this be something to be happy about? But Violet couldn't hold back her tears any longer, and she began to sob. George looked at her crying. Now that she had started, Violet couldn't stop weeping. He wanted to say something, but he didn't know what to say. Their reunion was indeed bittersweet. George could understand his Mrs. feelings. She was forced to leave Los Angeles and go to another country, and at such a young age. Violet hadn't known anything about the world when she was thrust so cruelly out into it. She was penniless and without family. If it weren't for Noah, she wouldn't have had anything. George looked around and spotted Noah for the first time. He kept nodding at Noah to express his gratitude. George had never expected that he would be able to return to Los Angeles. He didn't think he would ever be able to see his young lady again. This was the blessing of the heavens. George shed tears alongside Violet. The old man cried again, just like the night Violet had left. But this time, he cried happily and cried with joy. "Okay, if you two don't stop crying soon, I'm going to start crying. I'm dangerously close to shattering my manly persona," Noah joked, trying to lighten the mood. Violet laughed and smiled at him through her tears. The food Corey had ordered from DeLuca's arrived. Mike helped to bring their lunches up to George's hospital suite. George could not eat anything for the time being, but for the rest of them, it was well past lunchtime and they were hungry. "Set it up over there," Logan ordered Mike. There was a round table in the corner of the room. Logan wanted to eat with Violet, and knew she wouldn't want to leave George's side at this moment. He pointed at the table and said, "We'll eat together here." Mike did as he was told and pulled the food containers out of the bags. "You guys go ahead and eat without me. I want to talk to George for a while." Violet wiped the tears from her eyes, and Logan handed her a tissue. "Here, take this." Logan's tone was not gentle, but Violet still felt a surge of warmth. Knowing Logan as well as she did now, she felt the gentleness hidden beneath his abrupt demeanor. "Let's eat first. I'm hungry," Logan told her. "You two can talk after eating. You don't want to rush him," he suggested. George had just woken up, so Violet conceded Logan was probably right. Noah, Corey, and Mike sat down at the table to eat. Logan pulled Violet's chair over so she could sit beside him. "Okay, we'll eat first. George, you rest for a while. I'll be right over there. We'll talk later," Violet told him while patting the old man's hand reassuringly. He looked at Violet and nodded slightly. George's gaze swept over Noah, Corey, and the others that were also in the room. Finally, he fixed his eyes on Logan. George narrowed his eyes at Logan, knowing he had never seen this man before. Who was this man who was so bossy with his young lady? George thought this man looked like he was not someone to be trifled with. He looked like a playboy devil. Was this man bullying his young lady? "These are all my friends." Violet quickly introduced everyone to George. Violet could sense what George had been thinking and knew that Logan's demeanor would concern him. She didn't want George to misunderstand, nor did she want him to worry about her. Logan immediately frowned. What did Violet mean by, "These are all my friends," he wondered. Could Logan's relationship with Violet be compared to everyone else's? Weren't they more than just friends? Logan put the fork in his hand down heavily and stared at Violet. How could she lump him in with everyone else? Was Logan not special? Episode 312. George has something to say. Logan didn't like being lumped in with the rest of Violet's friends. Wasn't Logan different from the others? Why was Violet always so insistent that they didn't have that kind of relationship? Logan's eyes were on Violet, but she didn't even notice as she was watching George, smiling happily. He wanted to question Violet, but Logan felt a little conflicted when he saw her like this. She looked so relieved. Forget it. He decided not to say anything right now. He was afraid of upsetting her. He'd wait until they were alone to confront her about this. Logan picked up his fork again. Corey had ordered lunch from DeLuca's so that they could all eat together at the hospital. Logan frowned after taking a few bites of the fettuccine Alfredo. Corey, next time try a different Italian place. The last 2 times I've had DeLuca's, it hasn't tasted very good. Corey nodded. Yeah, can't say I disagree. The lasagna is a bit bland. Haley told me DeLuca's original chef left. Guess this new guy isn't as good, Noah said. Corey, find out where he went. We'll get takeout from there next time, Logan ordered. Well, that's gonna be a little far for delivery, Noah chuckled. The original chef moved back to his hometown. His new restaurant is in Pacific Grove, a small beach town in Central California. Pacific Grove. Logan felt a shiver of recognition go through him. Why did that name sound so familiar? Logan felt that this place was very special to him, but he had no idea why. He searched his memory and found that he had no recollection of ever having been there. He suddenly wanted to know more about this place. Caught up in his own thoughts, Logan didn't realize that George was having a reaction to the name Pacific Grove as well. George opened his mouth and wanted to say something, but nothing came out. He wanted to speak, but his body didn't allow it. Do you know the name of his new restaurant? Corey asked Noah. He'd seen his boss's reaction and felt that there must be something wrong. Noah shrugged. No idea, sorry. Logan thought for a while and then asked Mike to track the man down. Logan wanted to ask the chef from Pacific Grove some questions. Mike wrote down the town's name and promised to make arrangements for them to speak as soon as he located him. Violet hadn't been paying much attention to their conversation. She'd picked at her lunch before realizing she was too anxious about their afternoon court session to eat. Finally giving up, Violet went to sit beside George. After Violet had introduced Logan and the others as her friends, George obviously became very interested in them. He was glad to see Lionel wasn't included in this group of friends. That ingrate had betrayed Violet, and he'd been glad when his young mistress had turned her back on him. George was happy to see that Noah was still a part of Violet's life. The older man had always felt that Noah and the young lady were a match made in heaven. George had hoped that a relationship would develop between them. That night 4 years ago, when Violet had found herself in danger, George had called Noah. He'd known that only Noah could help her at that time, and he had. Noah helped Violet escape. When Miranda had shown up later that night with the intent to harm Violet, she found an empty room instead. That was why, if it wasn't for George, Violet might not be in this world anymore. However, watching how Violet and Noah were interacting in the hospital room, it was apparent to George that while their relationship was still strong, there didn't seem to be any romantic overtones. George was a little puzzled. Why had Noah not pursued Violet when he had the chance? After he finished eating, Logan pulled his chair closer to Violet. He listened as she quietly talked to George, who found the energy to speak a word or two intermittently. As Logan listened to the 2 old friends talk, he realized how much of her past Violet had not shared with him, Logan had never known how many calamities Violet had experienced in her young life. She had been very young when her parents died. As for her grandfather, although he doted on her, Violet was still young. There were many things that Kenneth couldn't yet communicate to her. Even if he had grown suspicious of Miranda, Kenneth would have tried to see the best in Charles. He was his son, after all. Even if Violet ultimately took over the Kingston group, her grandfather probably figured she'd still need the help of her family. Therefore, after his youngest son passed away, Kenneth encouraged Violet to have a good relationship with her Uncle Charles and his family. Instead, Violet had been deceived and swindled by the very people who were supposed to be her support system. In the end, Charles and Miranda plotted and framed Violet for her grandfather's death. She had almost lost her life to them. Logan wondered if Kenneth Kingston's soul in heaven regretted his decisions. Poor thing. The people that Violet had needed to protect her had failed. Although Logan had endured some hardships when he was young, he realized his past suffering paled in comparison to Violet's. Logan had lost his father and had an absent mother, but he still always had his grandmother. While Agnes was not an affectionate woman, Logan had always known she'd protect him. His grandmother made up for her lack of warmth by allowing him to grow up in a safe and stable environment. Logan was quite shocked. He'd never known that his sweet Violet had this kind of inner strength. He pressed on his chest. Logan's heart felt a little uncomfortable. Although Violet had not shared much of her past with Logan, he realized he'd also never asked. When Violet first came to the Smith group, he tormented and tested her. Logan had thought that she wanted to attract his attention. Later on, he found out that she really just wanted to find a job. And then, he'd practically forced her into accepting their contract. Logan suddenly felt like he had a lot of things he needed to make up to her for. Logan looked at his watch and saw that it was almost time for Violet and Noah to return for the afternoon court session. "George, I'm going to have to leave soon. Noah filed a lawsuit on my behalf, and we're fighting with Miranda and the Kingston family for the inheritance rights of the Kingston group." Violet filled George in on their case and told him about what had happened earlier. Noah listened to Violet explain, then added, "I have to hand it to Miranda. She may be evil, but she's not stupid. Having the will say that Charles was the heir, and then listing Elizabeth, Chloe, and Violet as the backup heirs, made the whole thing sound very credible." Noah shook his head and chuckled as he spoke. He found the whole thing funny. But George suddenly reacted strongly. His right hand could not move. He pulled his left hand out of the blanket and waved at Noah and Violet. Seeing his reaction, Violet quickly grabbed his hand. "What's wrong, George?" "Charles, no, not heir. Impossible heir." George had something important to say, but he was struggling to speak. His entire face flushed red. Frustrated at his inability to speak clearly, the old man grew more agitated. "It's okay, George. It's okay. I understand. You're trying to say that it's impossible for Charles to be the heir, right?" Noah asked him. George nodded heavily and slumped back on the bed, closing his eyes. He'd used all his strength trying to tell them this. Everyone already knew that Charles could not be the heir because Kenneth had decided to leave everything to Violet. This new will was a fake, and they all knew it. But then, why had George become so agitated? Why did he risk losing consciousness again to tell the truth that everyone already knew? Was there another reason Charles could not be listed as Kenneth Kingston's heir? From his place on the hospital bed, George started coughing violently. His breathing was rapid, and he could not catch his breath. The monitors beside him started screaming and beeping loudly, activating the alarm. Dr. Warner quickly rushed to George's bedside for an emergency treatment. Several nurses also ran in, pushing additional equipment. Logan saw that Violet was so scared that her face had gone pale. Without even thinking about it, he quickly pulled her to the side and into his arms. Violet clung to Logan as they silently watched the medical team try to save George. Dr. Warner and the rest of her medical team rushed to stabilize George. Violet was terrified something would happen to him. She clung to Logan as they watched the team work, seeking comfort in his arms. Violet could hear Logan softly murmuring words of reassurance into her ear. "Don't worry. The doctor will take care of him. Dr. Warner and her team are the best. Hang on, sweetheart. He'll be fine." It was rare for Logan to comfort anyone, but he'd obviously sensed her fear. Although his tone was cold as always, Violet still felt a sense of security from his words. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, but in truth was only a few minutes, the medical team had George stabilized. They'd given him a sedative to calm him down, and he now rested quietly. Violet breathed a huge sigh of relief. She couldn't lose George. Not only had the old butler once saved her life, Violet felt like George was the closest thing to family she had left. He treated her like family when her own Kingston relatives had betrayed her. He was also her last link to her grandfather. George had been one of grandfather's closest friends. He must know many things that even Violet didn't know. Relieved, Logan thanked Dr. Warner and asked the doctor to make sure George was constantly monitored. If the medical team needed additional manpower and resources, she only had to ask. Logan thought that George's reaction to Miranda's claim that Charles was the heir had been very strange. Everyone knew it was a lie, and that Violet was the rightful heir. Yet the old man had become so agitated and distressed. George had really wanted to tell them something, but his body hadn't allowed it. Logan knew the butler must know something they didn't. After thinking about it, Logan decided to ask Mike and his team to investigate the Kingston family further. Logan wanted them to contact old friends, clients, distant relatives, and anyone who might know something more about the relationship between Charles and Kenneth Kingston. If there was something there, they needed to find out what it was. Noah, Violet, and the rest returned to the court for the afternoon session. Logan stayed at the hospital for a while longer, making sure Dr. Warner had everything she needed to see to George's care. After that, Logan returned to work. He wanted to go to court to support Violet, but he knew his presence would be a distraction. Plus, there had been a lot going on in the Smith group recently, and Logan needed to be in the office to manage the situation. Logan had sent Corey with Noah and Violet to observe the proceedings and give him live updates. Fortunately, Drake was quite capable and could fill in while Corey was gone. The rest of Logan's team was also solid, with the possible exception of his little sister. Anna had started working as his secretary a few days ago. And well, his sister was no Violet. Anna was always causing small problems. But luckily, while this was annoying, nothing disastrous had happened. Plus, Logan had agreed with his grandmother that Anna entering the Smith group was a good thing. Anything that gave his sister less time to fawn all over Garrett was a good thing, as far as Logan was concerned. As the judge called the afternoon court session to order, Miranda sat at the defense table, looking as arrogant as ever. Charles now sat beside his soon-to-be ex-wife. He'd wanted to bring Sylvia with him to observe, but, at the last minute, had decided she would be too distracting. Charles needed to focus on the issues at hand. Charles had originally not planned on attending court, but he had been unhappy when he'd heard the news of the will Miranda had entered into evidence. The new will actually included a clause that if Charles failed as the Kingston Group's director, he should be replaced by Violet, Chloe, and Elizabeth. Charles was incensed. A bunch of girls? Please. Charles wasn't going to let that happen. He'd come to court to confront Miranda and make sure the Kingston Group would pass from him into the hands of his unborn son. After court was called to order, Noah rose and asked the judge for permission to speak, and the judge told him to go ahead. Miranda rolled her eyes at Noah. Now he was going to say something. "Thank you, Your Honor. I want to apologize for not being properly prepared this morning. You asked about the location of Kenneth Kingston's will, and I had to inform the court I didn't have it at the time." Noah reached down and snapped open his briefcase and removed a sheaf of papers. "As it turns out, I had the will in my briefcase all along." Miranda's eyes widened as she stared at Noah. No. This couldn't be happening. Therefore, I'd like to enter into evidence the last will and testament of Mr. Kenneth Kingston, a document that names his granddaughter, Miss Violet Kingston, as his sole heir. I request that it be read into the record at this time, Noah concluded. The reveal of Miranda's will in court had caused a commotion, but when Noah pulled out his own will, it was pure pandemonium. Chaos broke out in the viewing gallery, and reporters slammed open the courtroom doors as they rushed out of the room. The banging of the judge's gavel and her calls for "order in the court" was nearly drowned out by all of the excited chatter. Miranda, Charles, and their lawyer looked at each other, then quickly jumped apart, as if they were afraid of being implicated by one another. The will had not been stolen. Either the man Miranda had hired had lied, or Noah had prepared a fake will. Miranda glared fiercely at Noah, who stood calmly observing the courtroom chaos he had just created. Apparently, Noah's reputation as a brilliant lawyer was well-deserved after all. Miranda realized she'd severely underestimated the man's cunning. When the judge and bailiffs had finally regained control of the courtroom, the judge announced that she was ordering a forensic analysis of the two wills to determine their authenticity. This would take a few days. Once the analysis was completed, the court would resume, and the results would be revealed at that time. Miranda and Charles tried to force themselves to remain calm. What were they going to do? Was there anyone they could bribe? Could the wills be stolen from the analyst? They had to do whatever it took to keep the truth from being revealed. If it were proven that their will was a forgery, it would be all over. Not only would they lose the Kingston Group to Violet, but they could even go to jail. Miranda called Elizabeth in a panic. She told her what had happened and asked her to request Logan's help. Miranda pleaded with Elizabeth. "You have to try, Elizabeth. Remind Logan that Violet is in our will. Tell him that shows that our will must be the real one. Why else would Violet be in it? We have to prove Noah's will is a fake, whether it is or not." Elizabeth promised her mother that she would call Logan, then ended the call. Elizabeth looked wide-eyed at Joanna beside her. "Did you hear all that, Joanna? What are we going to do?" "Well, honestly, real or fake, neither will is very beneficial to you, Elizabeth. In Noah's will, you're left out completely. But even in Miranda's will, you only have a 1/3 chance at the inheritance rights, and that's only if your father is removed as the heir." Joanna slowly traced the lace pattern on the sofa with her finger as she spoke. "Then, what do you think we should do?" Elizabeth didn't disagree, but she couldn't think of any way to resolve the situation. "First of all, Don't do anything to affect the forensic analysis. No, trying to steal the wills. No, trying to bribe officials. You have to know that if you get caught now, then you will be on the hook and could likely even go to jail, Joanna warned. But, Elizabeth stammered, but if we do nothing and my mother's will is proven to be fake, she will still go to jail. Mother will be finished. I can't let that happen, Joanna. There must be a way to fix this. Joanna eyed Elizabeth, as if judging whether she should continue. Finally, she said, Well, I have an idea, but you're not going to love it. If you want to protect your mother and yourself, then the only way to do that is to push the blame for this elsewhere. Elizabeth looked at her with anticipation. You mean we need a scapegoat? You want to blame Violet, right? Well, I certainly wouldn't argue with targeting that slut. Plus, if she's in jail, then she's away from Logan. No, Elizabeth. Violet's too obvious a choice, Joanna explained. No one will believe it. Elizabeth was confused. Then who? Blame my dad? Joanna nodded. Yes, your father. But not just your father. You need to blame your sister, too. At first, Elizabeth was shocked at Joanna's suggestion that they should blame Charles and Chloe for the forged will. Why did Joanna think they should implicate her sister? Her father had betrayed his family, so Elizabeth was willing to sacrifice Charles to save Miranda. But could she sacrifice Chloe? Chloe had always been good to Elizabeth, while her sister's plots were malicious and often failed. Chloe had always tried to do what was best for Elizabeth. But the more Elizabeth thought about it, the more she realized Joanna was right. Blaming Chloe gave their lie the ring of truth. Maybe that was her sister's role in their family. Rather than always plotting to take others down, Chloe had to sacrifice herself to save the Kingston family. Plus, Elizabeth couldn't ignore that following Joanna's method was the best way to ensure she could maintain a long-term relationship with Lionel. Elizabeth knew Miranda would be harder to convince. Chloe had always been her favorite daughter. She would have to wait and let her mother exhaust all her other options. Only then would Miranda possibly be receptive. Miranda was indeed pulling out all the stops, trying to make the problem of the forged will go away. The forensic lab handling the analysis of the wills had not one, but 2 robbery attempts over the next several days. The lab's handwriting expert was also mugged and threatened. After that, Logan asked Mike to get involved. With Mike's assistance, all of the perpetrators were arrested and sent to jail. Mike also contacted an old army buddy, and soon the wills were moved to a highly secure federal forensic lab run by the FBI. Although Logan had said that he would not interfere in Violet's battle with the Kingston group, that didn't include leaving her in danger. Hiding his concern behind the excuse of protecting his shares in the Kingston group, Logan arranged for Mike to provide extra security to help ensure the safety of everyone around Violet during this period, including Noah, Haley, and the children. After their temporary bodyguards showed up, Noah told Haley that he was glad Adam and Amy were already staying with Agnes. The Alexanders had private security around the clock, so the children wouldn't notice any changes. Once again, Noah thought how different the battle with the Kingstons would have been if Logan had been on Elizabeth instead of Violet's side. Both sides anxiously waited for the results of the forensic analysis to come in. No one was waiting to find out the results in court. Both sides had internal spies on their payroll, with instructions to inform them as soon as the analysis was completed. When the results finally came in, they were conclusive. The forensic report revealed, with a certainty of 99.999%, that Noah's will was genuine, and Miranda's was a fake. Hanging up the phone after hearing the results, Miranda felt like she had been struck by lightning. She had never been so panicked before. Miranda had to think of a way out of this, and quickly. Someone had to take responsibility for this. They needed a scapegoat. Otherwise, she would be charged with forgery. Then the inheritance rights of the Kingston group wouldn't even matter, since she would be in jail. Inexplicably, Miranda became furious with Logan. Why hadn't he helped them? Elizabeth had followed Logan for years, and now Logan had left her and her family to suffer. He was utterly heartless. Miranda and Charles were finished, and Elizabeth and Chloe were going to suffer. Miranda had to find a solution before the forensic results were made public. There was a man. This man had been helping Miranda confidentially for years. Perhaps he could offer her assistance. But when Miranda secretly met up with him, the man told her his influence couldn't help her this time. Logan was helping Violet, and he couldn't compete with that. He suggested Miranda find a scapegoat, or two. The man told her, "Don't worry, though. I will help you vent your anger towards Logan at a later time. The Smith Group is in trouble, and we will use our connections to take him out when Logan's power falls." You are saying, Miranda stammered. She had heard about the Smith Group being in trouble and a plan to take Logan down. Was it true? Miranda wondered. Her heart was quite conflicted. She still had hoped that after Logan got bored with Violet, he would return to Elizabeth's side. But now, the man was saying Logan could lose power. What should her daughter Elizabeth do? Perhaps Joanna's other son, Garrett, would be a good choice? Someone is looking for me to cooperate with them, to deal a blow to Smith Group and Logan. You will know when the time comes, the man said, then hugged Miranda and rubbed her back to comfort her, telling her not to worry about the future. But what about Charles and that slut? Didn't you say the last time we met at the sushi place that you would help me punish them? Miranda asked the man. The man saw that she was distracted and was a little dissatisfied. What's the rush? Wait a little longer. When we have power and money, what can't we do? Miranda was caught up in her thoughts when the man left and barely noticed. When Miranda returned home, Elizabeth could see her mother looked defeated. Miranda had hit rock bottom. So Elizabeth knew now was the time to propose Joanna's idea. Elizabeth sat her mother down and told her why Joanna suggested blaming Charles and Chloe. As Elizabeth expected, Miranda was reluctant to blame her sister. Elizabeth, why do you want to drag Chloe into it? Why can't we just blame your father? Miranda wanted Charles to bear all the consequences, and she had no problem getting her soon-to-be ex-husband thrown in jail. He deserved to suffer, and Miranda knew his mistress wouldn't stick around if he went to jail either. Mommy, are you stupid? Have you forgotten the contents of the will? We included that clause for me, Chloe, and that slut Violet to take over the Kingston group. Since it's a forgery, the contents must seem beneficial to one or all of us, or people will suspect it. So you want to punish Chloe? Miranda carefully looked at Elizabeth and did not know why she would think of such a method. Could it be that the relationship between the two sisters had changed? Don't forget how much your sister has helped you, Elizabeth. Mommy, I would never want to hurt Chloe. I am only suggesting this for the sake of the entire Kingston family, Elizabeth said, earnestly. But if we push the responsibility onto Chloe, she will not be able to take it. Don't forget, she had her breakdown because she was also trying to help our family." Miranda was still not convinced. Elizabeth sat beside Miranda and said sincerely, "I haven't forgotten, but Chloe's breakdown also means that this might be the only way she can help us anymore. You can no longer rely on her, and if anything happens to me, not only will you not have me to help you, but you'll lose my connection with Joanna." Miranda rubbed her forehead. "What about Lionel? Your brother-in-law will have his thoughts on this. Chloe is his fiancée, and the Kingston group needs to rely on him to manage it." "Don't worry. I will be the one to talk to my brother-in-law. He is reasonable and will definitely agree." Elizabeth was full of confidence and felt that the relationship between her and Lionel was strong. Lionel would listen to her. Elizabeth pleaded, "Mother, there's no other way. Chloe will suffer temporarily, but later, we can think of a way to help her. And if Dad and Chloe are out of the picture, then I can take over the Kingston group once we deal with Violet." Elizabeth tried her best to convince her mother to choose her over Chloe. Miranda never had before, but Elizabeth figured there was a first time for everything. Elizabeth was desperately trying to talk Miranda into blaming the forged will on Chloe and Charles. Her mother was weakening, but worried about what would happen to Chloe. She didn't want her to have another breakdown, and she didn't want her to go to jail. "Right now, we have to protect the inheritance and keep you from going to prison, Mother. Once things calm down, we will think of a way to help Chloe," Elizabeth told her. "How?" Miranda looked at Elizabeth suspiciously. "How will we be able to help your sister if she's in jail?" Miranda was having a hard time believing in her youngest daughter. Up until now, Chloe had been the one who helped Miranda with her schemes. Elizabeth had always seemed like just a mildly talented actress who wasn't even able to hold on to Logan. Miranda had always felt that Elizabeth was not as capable as Chloe. Elizabeth waved her hand at her dismissively. "There are always more ways than difficulties, Mother. If we take over the Kingston group and have an ally like Joanna in our corner, what can't we do? When the time comes, we will come up with a way to help Chloe. Listen to me. If it was Chloe..." Elizabeth moved closer to Miranda's side and continued to whisper earnestly, trying to convince her. Upstairs in the Kingston mansion, Chloe was feeling a little lonely. Chloe had been discharged from the hospital that week and was resting in her bedroom. When Chloe had been in the hospital, she'd really missed her mother and sister. She was thrilled when the doctors announced they were releasing her. Now, Chloe could be home with her family every day and have them there to keep her company. But when Chloe returned home, she realized pretty quickly that things had changed. She had expected to be smothered with attention and sympathy. Instead, Mommy and Elizabeth would often ignore Chloe. Instead of coming to her room to visit her, they would huddle together and whisper for long periods of time. And then there was Lionel. He left for work early and returned late. Lionel seldom even returned home early enough to eat with her or keep her company. Plus, the newfound chumminess between Lionel and her sister concerned Chloe. Elizabeth often went to the company to help Lionel. Then, when the two of them got off work, they'd come home late together. Chloe couldn't help comparing her situation now with what had happened between Violet and Lionel. She prayed Lionel wouldn't let her down. Chloe hoped that she was the first person in Lionel's heart, and that he'd never do anything to hurt her. Besides, Chloe was Lionel's link to power in the Kingston family. If it weren't for her help, Lionel wouldn't have become the deputy director. Mother had stepped down, and Lionel was now the most powerful person in the Kingston family. Chloe wanted to be with Lionel more than ever, and the more she wanted him, the more nervous Chloe became. She would definitely not allow Violet to get anywhere near Lionel. But what about her sister? Did Chloe need to be worried about Elizabeth's relationship with Lionel? Chloe was a bit embarrassed to be having doubts about her own sister's loyalty. Perhaps she was overthinking things. Chloe had been lying in bed all day, and she felt stiff. She carefully got off the bed and walked around the room to stretch her legs. Chloe was a little hungry and decided to go downstairs to find something to eat. She had asked the housekeeper to make tomato soup, and she thought she might want some. Maybe even with a piece of grilled cheese on the side. When Chloe had tried to eat the hospital food, it had been so tasteless and bland that she had completely lost her appetite. She had lost a lot of weight, and now that she was finally home, Chloe was hoping that her appetite would return. She had become too thin and formed a sharp contrast with her voluptuous sister. Even Miranda looked better than her youngest daughter right now. Chloe couldn't sleep and was pale and had dark circles under her eyes. She needed to look better if she was going to hold on to Lionel. When Chloe went downstairs, she didn't see their housekeeper. She didn't know whether the woman was in the kitchen or if she had retreated to her own room in the servants' quarters. Chloe slowly walked around the living room before deciding to make her way to the kitchen. When Chloe passed by the study, she saw the door was ajar. Chloe pushed open the door and said in surprise, "Mommy, Elizabeth, I didn't know you guys were here. Why did you not come upstairs to let me know you were home?" Ever since the incident, Chloe's character had become much weaker than before. When she talked about Violet, she became malicious and spiteful. But with her family and Lionel, Chloe was clingy and weak. She wanted someone to stay by her side constantly and grew sad and needy when left alone. Miranda had noticed the shift in Chloe's personality, so she always spoke very carefully to her oldest daughter. Chloe felt that her mother's attitude towards her had changed, and her father hadn't even come to see her after the incident. The depression and hatred in Chloe's heart festered and fed on each other. "Oh, we thought you were still resting, Chloe. Mommy and I went to her study to discuss something so we wouldn't disturb you." When Chloe had opened the door, Miranda and Elizabeth had quickly ceased talking. They obviously couldn't continue their conversation in front of her. Chloe sensed the change in mood. Had her mother and sister been talking about her when she entered? Chloe had become more sensitive ever since waking up in the hospital, only to see Elizabeth and Lionel sitting so close together. At that moment, she had even suspected the two of them were having an affair. Now, when she saw her sister and Mommy talking, she felt that same whisper of betrayal. Were they planning something behind her back? Besides the illness in Chloe's body, she also seemed to have an illness in her heart and mind. Chloe knew she wasn't well, but it seemed that no one wanted to talk to her about it. Her parents, Elizabeth, and even Lionel, none of them wanted to talk to Chloe and ask her how she was feeling. "Chloe, do you need something?" Miranda stood up and looked at her daughter sympathetically. "Do you want me to have someone make you something to eat?" Miranda then glanced at Elizabeth, who stood up beside her. "Elizabeth and I were just discussing the lawsuit when you came in." Chloe knew that they meant Violet's lawsuit, and at the mere hint of Violet's name, Chloe's personality became malicious. "How is it going with that slut Violet? Can you make sure she dies this time? Mom, I can't bear it anymore. Every night, I dream of a child calling my name, and then Violet laughing at me as the child runs away. Chloe threw herself into Miranda's arms and started to cry. You guys have to fix this. Doesn't Logan's mom really like Elizabeth? Can she help us get rid of Violet? Just her name drives me crazy. I fear I will never get better if Violet isn't punished. Elizabeth looked at her sister breaking down, and then at Miranda. Their mother was not a gentle woman, and yet she was patting Chloe's back and trying to soothe her. Miranda was acting like a real mother, and Elizabeth was jealous. Miranda had never treated Elizabeth with sympathy and affection. Instead, her mother complained that Elizabeth was weak and frivolous and was always pointing out her shortcomings. Elizabeth cast aside these inexplicable emotions and tried to help Miranda persuade Chloe to calm down. Her sister was acting emotional and erratic. With Chloe's current mental state, how would they ever convince her to take the blame for the forged will? Then, suddenly, inspiration hit, and a huge wave of relief went through Elizabeth. That was it. With Chloe's current mental state, she could pretend to be crazy. Elizabeth would ask Joanna to find a psychiatrist to attest to Chloe's impaired mental state, and then she could be sent to a treatment facility. If it were determined Chloe was not of sound mind when she arranged for the forged will, Chloe wouldn't have to go to jail.